Everybody's got their mic on. Test. Yep.
Test.
All right, Nathan, crank it up. I call to order the Torch Township Zoning and Ordinance Steering Committee meeting of March 3, 2022 at 6:15 p.m. The primary purpose of this meeting is to discuss the agenda items listed below. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? There is no public, so there is no comment. Next item is approval of the agenda. Any proposed changes to the agenda?
I don't have a copy of the agenda.
Nobody has a copy of the agenda? All right, I can get you a copy real quickly.
I don't have a copy either, but I'm sure it's fine.
You guys?
Well,
You
just
didn't
read,
send it
just
out?
read through it real quick.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't bring it with me.
It's probably good.
All right, I'll run and get one.
Is it in email? I can pull it up if it is. I must have missed it if it was there.
I didn't-
I
didn't see it.
That's not working.
It's not working? Oh, I wonder if there's something he's got to turn on
I don't know, wait a minute.
for the. He's gonna, yeah.
Oh.
Can't hear you.
Now it's working. I had on the wrong program in my phone. It's too much for me to remember.
He hasn't had his breakfast yet.
All that technology. Articles 5 and 9.
Right, 5 and 9, 14, we're not going to do. How many folks do we have on the meeting? So I know how many I have to apologize to.
That's probably Jenny. She said she was number 2.
Yeah, definitions, Article 14, if there's anything major, if you did happen to read through them that you want to talk about, but they're still, like I mentioned in the email, they're still kind of in working form. I have to go through, when I put the document all together, so right now, because we've worked on different sections, I don't have a complete document that you can read through. So sometimes it's hard to catch some of those things. So I want to go through and define every use, make sure we get those into the definitions, which I gave you this section before we finalized our use list. So those all need to get checked, and then other definitions to have to do. So I guess we're kind of getting next steps, but for the next meeting will be a complete draft. And at that time, I'd ask you to spend your time on definitions.
That sounds
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do it. I tried.
And now definitions are the worst part of they're the most important, but they're the hardest to read and deal with.
Right, and I think it'll be a lot easier as we read through the entire thing than when we
Yeah.
know, oh, this should have a definition, look back and see if it's there.
Exactly. That helps me the most when you're doing that and go, this needs to be defined and we can get a definition. Yeah.
Good.
You're all hooked up, right?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
Lee,
I think so.
okay, good.
I can hear me really well. but-
So
It's the most important.
did we decide the agenda is changed by deleting 14?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right. So if there's no other changes, I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented with changes.
Second.
Second.
That was a tie. We'll give it to
Lee-
the
Lee-
elder gentleman.
Lee gets it.
Lee gets it.
You could have just said gentlemen.
All in
Well,
favor,
you
say
couldn't say
aye.
the elder lady,
Aye.
right?
All opposed? All right, moving on to the next item, business. The voluminous minutes from our February 3rd meeting. Any changes, questions, or comments? I will say, Veronica, it was a very nice job. If there's none, then I'll make the motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I decided to pause for a minute.
Oh, okay. It's good to see a nice lively group tonight.
Yeah.
If there's no other discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted. All right, moving to our first item of business, which is Article 5. And again, guys, we'll try to keep it to 2 hours. We've got 2 articles to go through, 5 and 9. When we're done with this, then we will figure out next steps. So Sarah, I'll let you take it away.
Sure. So, as you saw when you were reviewing this, we have Article 5 is all of our site development standards, our landscaping, our parking, signage, lighting, all of that nitty gritty that applies to the commercial districts or commercial development, I should say. These types like this landscaping is not going to apply to a single family home or even a duplex. It's only going to apply to those larger projects. And then Article 9 has to do with how you develop the property for subdivisions, for the PUD, could be commercial. And both of these articles are, I'm going to say basically new, because your current ordinance has some language related to, not related to landscaping, a little bit to parking, there's some lighting in there. And then development options, they're laid out a little bit differently in this. So I guess I'm kind of saying this is new. And some of the language, because it is new, may be a little extreme. I'd rather give you everything and have me cut it than not tell you an option or tell you how somebody else may do it or kind of a best practice. Because you don't know what you don't know is kind of my approach to it. So we'll get started on that. So in Article 5, we'll start with landscaping. And you haven't seen this because I didn't go into a lot of the detail, or we didn't really talk about it, but up in Article 3, it has a table that talks about landscaping. So for commercial, it tells you how to figure out how many trees you need to plant. So this tells you what we mean for all of that. This gives you the background, but the specific numbers to each district or use is up in Article 3. And you'll see that better when I put it all together in one document and how that all works together. So intent, purpose, applicability, and this is where I was talking about, is anything that has a site plan review or any additions to a non-residential structure, and then the expansion of non-conforming sites that do not meet the landscaping requirements. So that Section 3 is an example of the new language we just put into our zoning ordinance related to the village business district. We added in landscaping requirements. So a lot of those sites don't currently have any landscaping on them. So when somebody wants to redevelop that property or put an addition on their building, they'd have to come back and then comply with the landscaping requirements. And that's how we get everybody to slowly come back around with those properties. So that's what number 3 is talking about. And so they can exist.
You're saying number 3 on
right
the,
right, this one.
oh, here, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. So they can continue as they are, don't have to comply with landscaping. It's once they go to basically improve their property, put an addition on, then they would be required to start complying with landscaping requirements.
Okay.
Does anybody have any comments, questions on page 1?
I did. Is it 20% or 25% under 522A2?
It should be 25, so yeah, that 5 was missing there. So we'll add that in. And then we've got exceptions, which is on the next page there, and that has to do more with interior remodeling, change of use, but there's no exterior changes, And then if you're damaged up to 50% for some reason, you don't have to comply, which is nice because if you have a building, say Eastport Market now is going to become a restaurant, as long as they don't change the outside, they don't have to comply with the landscaping. It doesn't force that compliance. You could, if you wanted to, you could say that the change of use would require compliance with the landscaping. But that might be a little extreme since we don't have any landscaping requirements currently, nobody has them. But it just depends on how quickly you want to get that landscaping implemented.
And that would be the planning commission that dictates that.
When they're doing their review, right?
Right. Okay.
And then we go into what you need to give the planning commission for their review, and then the type of materials, which the planting materials on page 2 near the bottom there, 5.2.3, talks about the size of the trees, and it talks also about that native species, which we brought in to the village business in the commercial district already. When we did an amendment just a couple months ago. That talked about the native species, so that's getting carried through here in this language.
So that would be my first question. The first one would be 5.2.3A1. Plant materials shall be healthy, free of insects, disease. Who's going to check that? I mean, do we need that in there, or is that again an example when we move to number 2, we start going through all these dimensions? Is this really something the planning commission needs to decide if they want to leave it in or not?
The planning commission could have that discussion. This is one of those requirements where somebody's going to go through the approval process, and then they're, say they put all dead pine trees in for whatever reason. Actually, I had a junkyard that just cut down Christmas trees and stuck them in the ground to make them their buffer, and then they all died. But so this would have been like one of those standards where if you knew they put in something, when they were doing it, that would just give enforcement on the administration side the ability to do it. You're not going to check them as they plant them. It's more if they are planting something, which I don't know why you would waste the time or the effort, but just in case.
People do it.
They do. They try to
Alright.
get around it.
I was thinking, what if I'm cheap or have a green thumb and I can get the discount plants that might look a little sad, so they
Mhm.
don't really look healthy, and I'm gonna.
Yeah. And I think that, what I would say, if somebody planted something like that and somebody called me and said, hey, they planted dead trees, I'd be like, give them 30 days and see what happens. And with landscaping, if it's on your site plan that you're supposed to have landscaping, if at any time, 5 years, 10 years down the road, something dies, they're supposed to replant it. It's required to be replanted. A lot of times it doesn't always happen if one dies because it's an enforcement thing. The township has to go around and say you missed one tree. But it does help if you have either somebody come through and for whatever reason cut them all down, the next owner, or if you have a big die off of something, you come back to them and say, your site plan shows that you need landscaping here, so you need to replant it. So I would, give them some time to let those that need help still.
Sounds good.
Laura, could you move your microphone closer? Thank you.
Yes. Is this good?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So then this next page goes on through more details, that you have to round up for your number of trees, that you have to have ground cover for anything. So essentially you just can't have it open dirt left over. That's pretty standard language. Plant substitutions, this happens. This allows the zoning administrator to come through and approve substitutions while they're in the field, need a different materials or can't get what they thought they were going to get. Invasive species management, this is having to do with that planting of native species to not get the invasive species. Site design, utilities, and maintenance. So this maintenance is what I was just talking about, that they have to be maintained and then they have to be irrigated. any of the landscaping. It does allow the planning commission to waive that irrigation. And I have had that in some communities where, say, like a self-storage comes in and they don't put a well in because there's no water needs on the site, but they have to put irrigation in. And so then they have to put a well in just for irrigation. So we've seen planning commissions waive it for that individual, but they still have to plant and they still have to maintain those trees. So if they die, they have to replace them. They just don't have to irrigate. And they have to be planted, prior to occupancy. And then again, here's the replacement if something does happen to them.
Yeah, that was the one where I was like, wow, if I've got a very large tree and I have to replace like equivalent size, like, whoa, is it even possible?
Yeah. Well, the size should be the initial size. So maybe I should
okay.
clarify that.
Okay.
From that chart up above.
Okay.
So you couldn't plant a little potted, pine tree. It's got to be at least 6 feet tall, but you wouldn't
Right.
have to plant a 30-foot tall one.
Right, okay.
Well, we might do it for your yard.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move on to the landscape buffers and screening. So again, this makes a little bit more sense when you can see Article 3 because it's telling you when you need to put these items in, but these tell you how to develop the buffering and screening. So if you have a vegetated screen, what that should look like, or the berm, it talks about the slope for that berm, fencing, and green belts. If you have to put in a green belt, what that consists of.
Now, my question was, you talk about either height or length, but nothing on width.
For the green belt?
Well, for vegetation, greens, I mean,
Yeah.
do you need a specific width that's required?
In Article 3, it tells you what that width should be because it varies depending on sometimes the use or the district.
So for
So-
sure, I think you ought to put in here a reference back to Article 3.
Okay. Let me add that.
Because otherwise, people are going to go through here with all these questions, and there's nothing to remind them to go back to 3.
Okay. Right-of-way landscaping.
Oop, hang on.
Oops.
The, is there any setback requirements, like for the fencing? Fencing, I thought we had something, but do we have anything associated? So do you have to give a certain distance from the property line, or you can do
Yeah.
right up to the property line?
Yeah, a lot of these usually are within 10 or 20 feet of the property line. In Article 3, that's where,
Okay.
it'd say 10 or 20 feet from the property line. There may be some uses, now that I say that, I don't remember, but some of the supplemental standards that are in Article 7 that we talked about last month, didn't we talk about some of those? We didn't get to them, did we?
We just did the
Okay. Some of those may have some screening requirements. So you may have a time, I don't know if it says this or not, but where if you had a drive-through, you'd want to screen right next to the drive-through. But that would be specific in the ordinance. It would tell you, you need to put in a vegetative screen, and then you come here and you say, okay, vegetative screen must be, and this is what the definition of it is.
And we'll do cool things like linking to that section, right?
Yes. In the digital version, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just want to clarify, with the walls and fences, you're saying that instead of a setback, there are requirements in section 3?
Yeah, in Article 3, there's a table, so you have setbacks, and then you have, like buffering requires. So sometimes it says commercial uses adjacent to residential require a 20-foot green belt that you provide a vegetative screen in.
Shouldn't that be referenced here?
Well, that's what we're gonna add. I'm gonna add it up near the top of this section, see Article 3 for specifics related to the uses.
Oh, well, okay.
So I think this section will make more sense when you read the ordinance in total. Right-of-way landscaping. Again, this is new, so it's talking about where you would plant trees, so typically along the road right-of-way. But in Article 3, it tells you how many trees you have to plant based on, whatever the use or the district is.
Okay, I didn't understand A. Under that, maybe there's just a typo in there or something.
Yeah, shall be in the location of all required. Yeah, so you have to, landscape buffer has to have a minimum width of 15 feet, and that's where all your right-of-way planting should go,
So it's not off.
right?
Okay,
Should be of,
all right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not sure I understand it. That's why I wasn't sure if it was a typo or not.
It might just be maybe the language.
Shall be the location of all required.
It could say, all required road right-of-way planting shall be within 15 feet of the road right-of-way or something.
Well, that makes a lot more sense
Yeah.
to me.
So, done. Okay, lot landscaping. See, this does have that reference back to Article 3, so I'll go through and make sure they all kind of reference that. So this is if any additional landscaping is required just on the lot in general. We didn't put any lot landscaping in the village business district. I'm not anticipating putting anything too much in because we have a lot of vegetation. If we do road right-of-way landscaping and buffering, those are kind of your big items. But if you want to put in lot landscaping, if somebody puts in a commercial building and it's however many acres, they have to plant trees just on the property, you could require that. Next section, 5.2.7, existing vegetation. This is to try to preserve what we have existing. So it gives you landscape credit. So if you have a tree that's greater than 12 inches in caliper, it counts for 5 trees if you were to plant new. So we're trying to encourage when people develop property to leave what they can on the site because, a bigger tree is better for the environment than the smaller ones, even though you put in more smaller ones. So, and then it talks about how to protect those trees while you are doing construction, because that is an issue as well. Any landscaping questions?
Is with this credit ration, I mean, who's going to keep track of that?
Well,
Somebody comes in with a site plan and
Mhm.
you're going to have all these trees on a lot. Now they're going to have to go out and measure every tree.
Yeah, if they want to use it towards a credit, but because we only have road right-of-way landscaping and buffering, if there's trees on the lot, that doesn't count towards anything. They have to be in the road right-of-way, that 15 feet. So hopefully it'll be limited in the number. So the site plan, they would mark the trees they want to keep. And so then we can go out during construction and make sure they've got those marked, that they're keeping them, they've got them protected, and they don't remove them. So it is an enforcement, once they get their land use permit and start construction, there's that enforcement side of it too. But yeah, on their site plan, they'll have to tell us what they want to keep.
So I would, just a sidetrack, I would assume then the ordinance enforcement officers, as this stuff gets implemented, that we would know which property and what needs to be done, and that would be the direction you would give that individual to go out and do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, I think, that was the question I was having about enforcement, but we now have Bob And that would be the areas that he would be able to serve
Right.
the best.
Yeah. And if anybody sees somebody out there cutting down a tree and they call and, we go out and take a look at it. But it does have an enforcement component to it. And it's up to the township board, I guess, if it's something you want heavily watched or as it becomes noticed. I think of Meyer and Travers. They went through one time and cleared all the trees and shrubs out from by Kids Creek not that long ago, 5 years ago. And the township's like, no, you planted all of those when you got approved. They're on your site plan. You need to go back and put them all back in there. And Coles did that too. They had big, beautiful pine trees right next to their building and they cut them down. And you can see they've got smaller ones on there because the township went, no, you have to have these trees as part of your approval. So sometimes you catch those later on. But kind of when they get towards occupancy, somebody does have to go out and kind of count trees and shrubs and make sure that they were put in there in the first place before they start operating.
Well, that's for you and I then to make
Yeah.
sure that we build those guidelines.
Yep.
I won't-
Yeah,
Take that
that's
any
like a
further.
policy outside. Yeah.
Right.
I
Okay.
was
Okay,
I was with you, Lee, when I'm thinking of inventorying all of the existing things on a piece of property. But then I was trying to think, where are these buildings going to be going up on land here? With it, do we have a lot of pieces of property where we'd be putting up these businesses, and there would be a forested area right there where they have to inventory? I don't know if there would be or not.
And they'd only have to inventory the ones they want to keep, so
Hopefully they keep them all.
I know it would be nice. But
Is there any place in the ordinance where this type of control would be applicable to an R1 zone? I mean, what we're doing, this is for a site development, which could be residential.
mhm.
And I'm just thinking about the property rights folks who, if this stuff gets applied in any way to a residential home.
I think it is in the waterfront overlay district. I think there is some of this kind of stuff.
Right, but that would only be, for the buffer, for the shoreline area, yeah,
Right, but restrictions on being able to cut down trees and.
right,
So that might be,
yeah,
that might raise a little concern.
right,
From the property rights people, I would think.
yeah, and that we
I'm
didn't,
just thinking about the planning commission.
Yeah,
yeah, none of this stuff, none of these landscaping requirements would apply to your regular home.
Okay.
But do we have any, I'm trying to think, landscaping for the residential?
Mm-mm.
So people could go in and clear cut R1.
Right. I mean, they could clear cut anywhere. It's just when somebody comes in to develop something that's commercial, they have to put some trees back. Nobody else has to. But we don't have anything in the ordinance to limit anybody from clear cutting. Except for in that buffer
Except for
area,
overlay,
right?
the waterfront overlays.
Which we didn't get to talk about that section. We'll talk about that when we do the ordinance as a whole, that article, because
Okay.
that's all new. That was,
Yeah, because I had some concerns on enforcement restrictions, just
yeah,
basically going to what Lee was saying, that you're going to have some people who are going to say, you can't tell me what to do with my property.
yeah,
And are you going to get so picky as to make somebody get a permit to, clean up their view or not?
right. Yeah, and that was one of those things where kind of when I asked, I'm like, do you want to go this way? And you're like, well, throw it in there. We'll cut it, but yeah, so we'll have to talk about that. And I'm sure the planning commission will have a discussion about that too.
I want to clarify that I have absolutely no problem upsetting property rights people if we're doing the right thing.
No,
Yeah.
we know you, Lee.
Oh, okay. I just want to try to make
clarified.
the planning commission's job a little easier too, that's all.
Okay, the next item deals with parking. So these are talking about specific to parking lots. Doesn't apply to single-family dwellings or duplex. Talks about the location of where they have to be. They cannot be in the front yard. And that they are required to be screened per the ordinance, which that's up in Article 3. Talks about some tree islands. So like I said, this is all new too, but tree islands are, at the end of the parking row where they put the curbing around them and there's a tree in it. It's grass. And the intent with the tree islands is to help shield either the car or the asphalt from the sun so you don't get kind of these heat islands. So the tree islands protect from the heat islands. I know up here we don't have a ton of development, commercial development, but that's probably a huge concern right now, but I guess it's nice to start here with the trees so then you always have them. But it would be up, if you don't like them or don't think people should have to plant trees in their parking lot, we don't have to have that either.
I like the idea if it's a big one. I was trying to imagine the places that would be large enough to have, because it seemed like the dimensions of the tree islands were kind of large for like a village business. Like, would there be somewhere where you put in a parking lot and have room to spare?
Yeah,
I don't
and it
know.
would probably be mostly, like right kind of at the end. You would have room. It'd be kind of nice. Like I'm thinking, I feel like maybe I'm the one that always says this, but like if you're looking at like Eastport Market, like that's just kind of like a big sea of asphalt. And so it'd be nice if it was kind of broken up in certain spots, maybe with a tree or something, to try to help with some of that.
Yeah, something that size, I could definitely see it.
Yeah.
Well, don't most of our businesses currently have parking in the front?
That I had that marked as what was it, 531B2.
Yep.
That was something that people in the public were really frowning on
Oh.
when we were talking about forcing the parking in the back. Ugh, they did not like that.
Really?
Let me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess,
We could say instead of front yard, maybe front setback, or you don't mind if it's in the front setback even.
well, I'm just wondering, aesthetically, I'm imagining something that I don't think will ever be accomplished here. I think it's great to have that direction, but there's most of the property is already developed. And, unless they tear a building down, how are they going to move the parking lot to the back?
And that would be the only time they'd have to comply, would be if they redeveloped like that. Yeah, I can't remember now. Did we pull that out of the village business district? Can't be in the front yard?
I feel like we might have, because people were so
Yeah.
adamant. that they
I'll
did not
double
like
check
it.
that. Maybe instead of yard, it should say setback.
And as far as the setback, I'm trying to refresh my memory, maybe offhand, with commercial, what is the front?
In the village business, it's 25 feet from the road right of way would be the front setback.
Okay,
So they could put parking, if they set their business back 100 feet, they have 75 feet, they could put parking in front of it.
and like the corner in Eastport, that is commercial? Or
That's
do-
all village business.
That's village business.
Yeah.
So like, Torchlight Cafe is village business, so they have
Yeah.
a 25-foot
Right, 25-foot setback.
setback.
Yeah.
What is it that used to be Sunny's, where the cone,
The,
31 scoop?
31
Yeah.
31 Scoops is.
mhm,
I think their parking lot comes pretty
Yeah.
close to the
yeah.
street.
But that would be grandfather.
Right, that would be allowed to remain.
No.
The biggest.
Well, I know, but when 95% is
Yeah.
developed and, other people come in and want to do something, and I'm just wondering how much trouble that will cause, or,
Well, I was gonna say, you don't want to have your parking go like right up to the road right of way, but we do require road right of way landscaping that's within 15 feet. So that already pushes it back 15 feet from the road right of way. So, I mean, I think if you wanted to remove that requirement, of not, or restriction of not allowing it in the front yard, I think you could do that and it still wouldn't just be, asphalt to asphalt essentially, or something like that.
Well, I just look at the practicality of this thing. Every business we have in the township right now parks between the business and the road. I mean, I can't think of any that has parking in back. And they like that because it shows that they're doing business. And if you have a new business come in and says you got to park out and back, I just don't, unless I'm reading this wrong, I don't know why we would want to do that.
I think when we were talking about it with the planning commission and forcing it to the back, it was just so that we could make it look nice up front. And I think it would look nice, but that in my mind is a beautiful, already, planned community where everything is in the back.
well, that's what I'm not objecting to doing
Yeah.
that, because I think aesthetically it would be very nice. I think that issue for most of the property might be water under the bridge. And are we creating an undue hardship for, the few places that might be redeveloped or developed when, 90% isn't that way? And are we going to accomplish the goal?
Right.
I'm not actually stating an opinion one way or the other. I'm asking questions.
Yeah, and the thing about when you say no parking can be located in the front yard, what it does is it pushes the buildings forward. So then they're closer to the street, and some of it's got a large road right of way anyways, but it can help slow down traffic because there's buildings there, and it's got this perception for that. So that what it kind of does without requiring it is saying, move your building up so that your parking can go behind it instead of having the parking up front. And usually it's more kind of traffic calming, but it's also visual, in the village areas. Ideally you would actually end up with a village where maybe at some time you'd put in sidewalks and people could walk, they have their residential houses and their commercial, and you'd, be next to the building then instead of a parking lot. You don't have to walk through the parking lot to get in the building. It's kind of what it's forcing to do with a lot less words.
Sounds like this is a PC question.
Okay,
So we can boot it to them.
sure.
We'll let them know we had a
Okay.
lot of discussion on it.
Yeah.
And in that parking table, are those numbers correct? The stall depth, they seem inconsistent with the 45-degree angle, 19 feet, 60, 20 feet, 90, 18 feet.
Let
I would think that,
me double check that.
I think that it would be 18, 19, 20.
Probably supposed to be 20 or 21 maybe, or. Double check.
I'm sorry, yeah,
Right.
45-degree angle.
Yeah.
You don't come out into the road so
Right.
far, so I would think that would be the smaller number and it would graduate up
Yep.
incrementally.
Yeah. I'll double check that. Something that we should talk about probably a little bit, or at least I should mention, is item G on that page. So the page 7 out of 68 talks about surfacing. So it talks about a dustless material like asphalt, concrete, brick, stone, or pavers. Gravel shall not be an allowable material. And that the planning commission in the agricultural zoning district can allow for an exception to the surfacing materials.
Well, just in the agricultural area.
Right, so in the ag, you could have gravel. It still should be dustless, so they need to maintain it in a certain way. But they wouldn't be required to do asphalt. But yeah, all of the commercial up in the village business districts and that would need to be a solid surface for their parking. I mean.
I'm good with that because I really wish Pearls would redo theirs.
And Torchlight Cafe.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
them.
yeah, that place is so muddy. You can't, it's like,
Yeah.
and they want all that stuff coming into their,
Well, they've got
Right.
that big window that they keep open all summer.
I know, and then
it
the
just
dust
gets
goes through.
dusted in there all day
Yeah.
long,
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so
which can't be good for the people
maybe,
dining there.
maybe we need to have a referendum to have them
Yeah.
pave their parking lot.
So the rest of this is just kind of, you know, talks about your parking, your standards for your parking. There is an item N talks about access drive. So this is talking about connecting to your neighboring property. Like you're connecting your parking lots. So this would allow it and not be an issue. In this ordinance, it goes to parking maximums instead of parking minimums.
Yeah, I was
like
like,
that.
whoa, we cool with that?
So that is a change. It's up to the township how you'd like to handle that. We're just finding that there's so many people are required to put so much parking in and they're not using it. So when you have the maximums, that allows for the smaller parking lots. And usually people that are developing are happy with that because parking, we're counting so many spaces and they just don't get used. There are implications with that too, because if somebody doesn't build a large enough parking lot, where do these people park?
I think of that ethnology in Elk Rapids because
Yeah.
I don't think they really had much
They don't-
parking at all.
No,
Now
now
they
they
have
have
none.
none.
Yeah, it looks like maybe they've made some deal or something, but they got really busy and
Yeah.
people were, yeah,
I think they got permission from the building,
Fisher Insurance.
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
to
They
use
did
their
Fisher
Yeah.
parking.
parking lot.
What would they have done though if they hadn't? Oh my,
They'd be parking all along that side road there,
yeah. Ooh,
that road between the two roads. They do anyway.
yeah.
Kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, and so, we require, like, the ordinance, if you have a use, you're required to have people park on your property. So people couldn't park along 31, like Torchlight Cafe, right? If they had a maximum parking numbers and they're full, you can't park on the road.
Right.
That becomes an enforcement issue. So then the zoning administrator or ordinance enforcement officer needs to say, hey, we see this is consistently an issue. You need to correct this. And so you either need to make an agreement to park next door, you need to post it, something needs to happen to accommodate that.
Okay, so, for example, I believe I've seen at TLC where the side road, they have parking along that side of the building as well. But when the parking lot has been full, people parking on the grass on the edge of the road. So that would be in the
Right.
right of way or?
That's in the right of way. That really should not be happening. Just because it's not designated parking and because it is commercial, we want to try to get people in and not cause traffic issues for their business. Unless you want to, some communities are like, oh, we don't have on-street parking here, but we don't care if you park on the street, that's fine. But then most of the time people are like, there's people parking everywhere, it's all just chaos. But I think we found too, like at 31 Scoops, when they were just in for their site plan review, and they're like, oh, we have these parking spaces along the side street there. And they've probably people started parking there, more people parked there, and now it's kind of this gravelly parking area that never was approved. Should be grass, potentially. I don't know the history,
Right.
but I'm guessing that it started where it just needed more parking.
Right.
And like I said, that's an enforcement thing. That's something the township, if they didn't want that to occur, or at least say that those spots don't count towards your parking calculation because they're not legit.
That could be, I'm wondering if that would, because that's the county road. I wonder if that grassy area is part of their easement.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that's probably a 66-foot
Yeah.
road requirement
Right.
in that grass. So that would be the county would have to enforce that parking.
Yeah. And they could come along and put in no parking signs or something. I mean, most of the time that stuff, it doesn't really interfere with anybody's life and it's okay. But at the same time, we wouldn't want to go around starting to approve plans that we know could potentially cause an issue.
Well, I guess the question for the planning commission is whether they want this and are they willing to enforce it? Or
Right.
is it better to let
And,
it
you
be?
know, we could go back to minimums to, you know, I mean, that's the question. Do you want to do maximum or minimums? Seems like everybody now is going to the maximum just because we have too much parking. But we also here don't have a lot of parking in some areas, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the enforcement with ordinance enforcement officer, we can start doing some of that stuff. And the other thing is, that's another reason why we're going to have the public meeting on the police officer, so that there's even more enforcement capability on some of this stuff that's safety oriented. So we'll figure out the enforcement side.
Yeah, and you know, I'm thinking of, you know, if Torchlight Cafe wasn't that use right now, you know, say it was a retail, and then a restaurant came in, and then they were required, because they have minimums, put in all this parking, and they just don't have the space to put it in. You know, they've probably already bought the building, they're running into this issue, now they can't go in there, where the maximum, you know, we say, okay, well, you can't put more than this, but put as much parking as you can to make it work, and they're going to want to try to get it there. But it doesn't kind of limit or stifle them or not allow them because they can't fit all their parking spaces.
Right.
So I don't know, right or wrong, I don't know.
We'll let the PC work on it.
Perfect. Calculating parking spaces, this is pretty standard, how you do it based on the different uses, if there's floor area or if it's pews or seats or whatnot.
Well, I had a question. If we're on 532B3, is that 25 square feet of floor is one seat? Or should that be inches?
I think that's,
24 inches of
That's-
bench or pew space. or
well, when you
25
consider,
square
I
feet.
think when you average out
square
the
feet.
table
Okay,
and the,
Yeah.
Okay.
and seats and spaces in between, I think that probably is
Okay.
pretty accurate.
Yeah.
okay.
This does allow for like shared parking if two businesses next to each other, kind of like you were talking about, that's a restaurant, right? The up in Elk Rapids, and now they're sharing with the insurance agency because they,
It's a distillery.
yeah, they, you know, they have different peak times probably, so why not just use all the parking? So,
Yeah.
that allows for that. And then something that this does have, and I don't know how you feel about it, is the bicycle parking. In Article 3, I did not put any required parking in any of the districts, but I think having it here reminds people that maybe they should plan for bicycles. But I don't know, I don't know.
I mean, if we ever get that trail.
I was going to say, if the
Wow.
tar trail makes it up here, that might be an
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. So it's like, do you just require somebody to start do you have them? It's kind of a chicken and an egg sometimes, because you're like, if there's no facility to park your bike on, people don't ride their bike. But if nobody's riding their bike, do we need to put out a bike rack? And it's not crazy. It's like, if you have a parking lot that has 50 parking spaces, you need to have 2 bike parking spaces or something.
Well, the reality is Eastport Market in the summertime is packed with bikes,
Are they?
especially on weekends, because that's a stopping point. I don't know if there's a lot of TLC traffic with
Right.
that, but we do have that, the width on the road is wide enough. They have the bike races and that stuff, and that's where they stop, Eastport Market. So it's just a question. They wouldn't have to do it, right? Because their grandfather,
Right.
it's not a big deal. But you may want to think about that.
Okay. I didn't realize there was that much bike traffic through already.
Oh.
Yeah.
Summertime, fall,
Yeah.
especially on Sundays.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yep.
Okay.
Plus, there's a lot of people at Browns Park that have bikes.
Yeah.
They bike around places.
Okay.
You know, Pine Hill is another place where a lot of bikes will stop when they do the ride around torch and on weekends, like you said, but and they encourage the bikes because they've got the restaurant there. Eastport Market, the big attraction is the restrooms.
Or one of them. I think the ladies in the zone, they don't have very much.
That's true.
The next section talks about access management. So again, this is new. This talks about, how many, well, I was at the beginning, where you are trying to limit your access to the road. And also F talks about cross access management. What I mentioned before, between parking lots or a service drive, to help with that. I know you already have a lot of development. There's not a lot of commercial that just goes, you don't have like strip commercial along 31, but should that ever get rezoned to commercial, it's nice to kind of have limited access because it helps with traffic flow and speeds if you have one road where everybody comes out at instead of 4 driveways. Right. Is the thought on that. And then curb cuts, talking about having 1 curb cut instead of somebody putting in 5, or if you had a gas station come in, I know they like to have as many curb cuts as possible to get in and out of them, but trying to limit the number of curb cuts.
I had a question on that, the G2. So we're talking about residential now?
Oh, there it does have, yep.
So this
And
does,
we could take that
apply?
out of there. That just that sentence applies to
okay.
Yeah.
I say we remove it.
remove it.
Pardon?
I say we remove it.
Yeah, I was concerned about that means you can't have a horseshoe driveway.
Right.
Let's say you've got 200 feet,
Mhm.
you've got one of the rare wide lots or something like that.
Right,
Then you can't have a horseshoe driveway.
right. We can take that out. It doesn't, when you read it with everything else and kind of how I've been talking about this section, it'll get lost, honestly. Nobody
Yeah,
will
I
ever.
was like, oh no, have I been reading this from the wrong perspective all this
Right.
time?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And then we have some spacing for driveways as far as how they're spaced from each other, offset from each other. That's on page 10, that little chart in there for that. Loading zones. These are for your commercial businesses. This doesn't have any dimensions on it. I don't believe there's any dimensions in the current ordinance, or else I would have brought them over here. But these are, like when you have retail or, a restaurant or grocery store or something for the trucks to park. So some places will say you need to have a 14 by 40 space or something so that you can back the semi truck in or a box truck in to require that space there. So I don't know if you're just comfortable saying you have to have one, or if you want to put in those numbers at all. Okay, I'll move on to lighting then. Lighting is very similar to your existing, except for it has a little bit more detail in it. And so this is all kind of dark sky compliant as the lighting is intended to be, which is the same as that's in your current ordinance. It's full cutoff. So it talks about all that kind of lighting. And it does have the exemptions in there, for your flags, your holiday, your residential. So this is commercial,
It is only commercial?
right?
Okay.
So your residential lighting doesn't fall under this. Because it's got that B. So 5.4.2B. So the only thing it doesn't allow is for you to put your residential lighting, like to shine it in the road or something like that because of the end of that sentence. provided that it's directed towards building or land.
So B does apply to residential, but the
Right.
rest of it doesn't, or it
Right.
does?
It does not. So this section says none of this section applies as
Okay.
long as it's directed towards your building or your land. So you wouldn't have to be 100% cut off or, anything like that with your residential lighting. You could put up your barn light.
But basically, lights in your landscaping would have to,
Not residentially.
really? So I could put spotlights shining up into the trees.
Well, that's not directed at land or a building.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. Then gets into the shielding, and then we've got that graphic that tries to illustrate what type of lighting we're talking about. The next gets into illumination levels. This would, like I said, apply to your commercial. This tries to help so we don't get too bright a light, because even though it's all down shielded, reflect back up and go back up, kind of off the ground, and illuminate the sky. So that's where this intensity is involved, and then the color temperature, which I think that's a little high personally, but is 4,000 Kelvin. So you're trying to get to the warmer light when you're dealing in LED lights. 2,000, 3,000 are more yellows. And then when you get up like 5,000 is a very blue, bright light.
White light,
White.
it appears to be very, very white.
Yeah. And so that's trying to limit that for your commercial businesses. And you can see the difference in, if you look at a night, like a satellite night of Germany, and you have East Germany and West Germany, one uses one color and one uses the other. So you can see the difference in the two. I think it was Germany that did that. That's a good example. Most people probably don't care. It's kind of a,
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So if you don't care, we can take it out. But yeah, trying to get more of a yellow light instead of that bright white light.
I want to go back to something Bob alluded to, and that's residential lighting. This applies to site development. But it also applies to residential lighting?
It would, the only part that applies to the residential lighting would be the sentence only limits residential lighting in that you cannot shine your light up or into the road. It has to be shined on the ground or on your building.
And where do we say that? Just specifically for residential, where do we
Right.
say that?
It says, so in section 5.4.2, page 11, item B. So this,
5.4. Okay.
yep. So it's saying exemptions. The section is exemptions. So it's saying
Oh, okay.
these are exempt from the
Okay,
section,
yeah.
but they cannot, even that first sentence, cannot glare into the public road right-of-ways, and could not shine up. So that would just be an enforcement thing. If somebody puts on a big spotlight that shines up at their house, we would get noticed. We do have neighbors that fight about this currently. So it is a thing.
Well, I guess, I mean, I saw that, but I'm still, if somebody is doing something with residential lighting, they're not looking here for that. They're looking in the R1 zone or something for requirements for residential lighting. And of course, you would tell them where to look for it, but it's not in a section that applies to residences. It's in a section that applies to a site development.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Well, I could put it into Article 2 where it's under more general provisions if you wanted me to. So then it would apply, I mean, it could go there because it would apply to everybody, and then you have
Is there-
exemptions that take it out of the residential, so that would work.
I'm just thinking about one of the reasons that we're doing this exercise is to clear up inconsistencies within the zoning ordinance.
Okay, well,
And
aren't you-
if
aren't-
we are going to have elements of the zoning ordinance for a specific purpose, like a residential a home residence, but people shouldn't have to go to different places to get well, that's, the lighting's in the site plan.
So
And
in section,
I just use that as an example. You don't want to have too much of that because now they're starting to have to go to different places. I know that's what you're
Yeah.
here for,
Right,
to make sure they know where to go.
yeah.
okay,
But
so in section 3, you have these tables that address dimensional standards, landscaping and fencing, and you do have like single-family residential, the table there, which off-street parking is, probably
Mhm.
not really an
Right.
issue. But couldn't you add any lighting restrictions in that area? So there's one place that you can go and find all that?
Well, I'd have to repeat it in each district then, though.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that you have a 3-part table under each zone.
I can look and try to figure something out to make it. I understand what you're saying. A lot of residential lighting, you just don't deal in it. The only time you deal in it is when the neighbor complains about a new light that gets put in. People don't call, people don't ask, they don't even think about it, they just buy lights. So I don't think that they're necessarily looking in the ordinance to see if they're complying or not, because they wouldn't even know they should. But I do also understand. So let me see if I can find a way to address your concern and make it easy for everybody.
well, the big rage with the new homes, at least on Torch Lake Drive, is to put 2 big lights at the top of the driveway on the road. And those things don't shine down, and they're, and the new places going in are putting these things in. That's just
Yeah.
uh,
May make sense to move it maybe to Article 2 or somewhere in Article 3 somehow.
Well, I'm just wondering if like it could, a lot, it might just be 1 or 2 lines under landscaping and fencing standards, maybe it's landscaping, fencing, and
Lighting.
exterior lighting
Yeah.
standards or something like that.
Mm.
But I do know that I've seen some of the, pillars at the end of the driveway with the lights, and I think they're fairly controversial.
Ooh. Ooh, I think it looks fancy.
Pardon?
I think it looks fancy.
Very estate-ish.
Yes.
Okay. So exterior lighting, so page 14, 5.5.1 is kind of where we left off. It talks about hours of operation, which is the same as that it's in our current ordinance, pole height, and then prohibitions on certain types of lights. We could take out some of the prohibitions on the types of fixtures if you'd like to. Sometimes they seem a little excessive. I mean, I try to keep like the animated flashing or moving lights. I'd like to keep that. Search lights, keep that. But if you're not particular about the type, certain types of lights people use, we can take some of those out.
So the unshielded luminous tube neon, so anybody who has one of those open neon signs would be,
Well, this would be used as the accent. So it's like the neon that they put on the inside of the windows,
okay.
or like around the softening or fascia is what it's for the accent.
Okay.
We actually, I think there's a house that we were involved with that had the tubing going
It was
around
right
the
next to my
house.
sister's house.
Wow.
Yeah, the blue lights over on Golden Beach.
Yep.
Yep. It
Ooh,
was pretty.
these are getting fancy.
Okay, the next section is signs, and I have to fully disclose that I dislike signs a lot. And regulations for signs.
Can we go back to lights for a second?
Mhm.
Back to the things, the big lights that are on at the end of the
Mhm.
driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Is the size something that you're thinking of? Or, for instance, do those lights have to be turned off at 10 o'clock? As opposed to being lit, from dark
No.
to dusk?
They're exempt from this section, so they can stay on all night.
There's
Okay.
really no restriction.
Well, and I would, I mean,
Now
ye-
there's, what, it has to be pointing towards the ground, I guess?
right, so you wouldn't be able to put a globe on. You could put something, something, but it's got to have a top on it so that it's directing it downwards.
I see.
It has to
Alright.
be, the bulb has to be shielded
Right,
horizontal to the,
right. Or somehow it has to have a cat, more
It's
like
got
a
a cap on
bollard
it.
style something. So yeah, they wouldn't be able to just put those orbs. I don't know, whatever.
or the coach light kind of
Right.
thing with, that,
Yeah.
you can,
Right.
where you can see the bulb.
Right. You could probably do that as long as it has a top so that it's, kind of. I think you still could get some of the coach light look, but it may, the bulb may have to be up inside of it.
Up inside the shielded part. Well, I'm
Yeah.
looking at like the pictures here and
Yeah,
they do a good example of describing the difference.
yeah.
And so the question is,
See, the thing is that this picture, because they're exempt from that. So it would just, the only real requirements are it's shining on the land you're building and not on the road right away or into the sky.
okay,
So,
so they really, the bulb, for example, could be visible as long as it has a shield on the
right,
top that directs the light down,
yeah,
not up.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not shining into your neighbor's window, which I guess if you look out your window, you can see the light is that shining into your neighbor,
Look away.
All right.
I want to get back to Bob's comment about the 10 o'clock
Mhm.
thing. And it has the explanation and the hours of operation. How does this apply? Again, this is for mainly a commercial.
Mhm.
What, do these same exemptions and everything apply to residential lights?
No,
So you can't require a residential light to be turned off. Is that what you said earlier?
right. Well, if you wanted to put in that regulation, currently the ordinance is not drafted to require you to shut off your light at night in your residential property.
That would upset me. If someone
Yeah.
told me I had to turn my lights off at 10 o'clock at night, I would be angry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think residential wise, because a lot of people leave their front porch light on or,
My kid's out, she's
yeah.
not gonna be home till midnight, I'm leaving
Right.
the lights on.
right.
Yeah, I don't think we're saying that.
Yeah.
We wonder that. We're just trying
No,
to figure it
I'm
all
just
out.
putting my 2
Yeah. We like the
Shut me
2
down.
cents.
Okay, we are not restricting the hours of residential lighting.
Right.
Correct.
Got it.
Just to be clear. Okay. So signs. This is a complete overhaul of your sign section. In 15, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case that talked about content neutral signage. So our existing language in the zoning ordinance is not content neutral. So content neutral means you can't read the sign to figure out what it is. So you can't distinguish between real estate signs, political signs. Those are the big ones. Nonprofit signs. You guys treat them all the same. You deal with the type of sign so that you don't have to read it to figure out what you're doing. This is still, there is another, is it U.S. Supreme? I think there's another U.S. Supreme Court case that's dealing with signs right now or is on the docket to be dealt with. I don't recall the specific issue. Oh, it has to do with on-premise and off-premise. And so when they did that, the case in 15, there were some justices that supported, they wrote a like a concurrent brief. So they supported the end decision, but they had some other language that talked about on premise or off premise. So everybody kind of took it and said, well, we can't regulate content, but we can tell you on premise or off premise and regulate those differently. So like you couldn't put an off premise sign as like, say Torchlight Cafe wanted to put a sign down here. We could regulate that different than their sign on their property. But the Supreme Court's going to tell us if we can do that or not do that sometime in the near future. So signs, there's a lot of information on how we just deal with signs, how we calculate sign area, and items that are exempt and where you can put them. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on kind of the first, I'm going to call it their page 15 is 68, 16, 17.
I have a question on page 14. Under 5.6.2A, number 1, address bearing signs. So would residential does this apply to residential property, first of all?
It would.
Okay, so, I mean, you can find plenty of signs around that are larger than 2 square feet that identify people's properties or have their name on them or something. So we would be restricting that so somebody couldn't put, a big boulder this big carved with their
But
address
but
on
the
it
whole-
anymore.
Is the whole boulder though, or isn't it the section where there's wording is this?
It would be the
actual-
wording.
So you could put that huge boulder, but as long as your words aren't as big as the boulder.
Okay, so what if the whole face is cut out? It's more like a gravestone on one side. It's been cut and carved and.
Yeah, I mean, then
how do you, there's
Right.
no line around the name to delineate where the sign ends. It's.
Right.
But you got like,
I mean, you could draw a box around it, and I think that's where it talks about the surface area, a box around like the text for it. I mean, I think that's a little bit, you could call it even, let me see something. So you might be able to call that a freestanding sign. Somebody, because you're allowed to have in the R1 up to 10 square feet of a freestanding sign on your
Okay.
property. So, I think that there may be some in the definition like boulder specific, but people that put up, posts and then
Well, the
say
posts and the big
Lake
fancy
Cottage or
carved
something.
Lake Cottage and,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's some,
So those can be 10 square feet.
okay.
So
What
this,
number is that under?
that is 5.6.9 freestanding signs, page 21.
Where does it say in here that this goes back to the same thing about the lighting, that's commercial versus residential. This is even, I think, more applicable because commercial signs are one thing. You got a Eastport Market or Pine Hill Nursery, you got a big, they should have a big sign. And the residential should be restricted to the mostly temporary signs, although builders usually have their signs up for a couple of years, which that's fine. That's however long they're working there. And we have restrictions for political signs in our old ordinance in terms of how long you can have a political sign up. But I just think that there should be a definition between residence and commercial because the signs are so completely different.
Well, that's what we have to deal with that under each type of sign and which district they're allowed in, is how we have to deal with that part of it.
Well,
So
I
this,
I wouldn't
this,
see a problem with a commercial entity being able to have the exact same small signs as a residential area, but I would have a problem with residents putting a big commercial sign in. So I don't think it's very smart for a business person to put political signs in front of their business, but they've done it and they can do it. But again, it just gets back to what's easy for people to find and where do they find a definition for what can they put out?
So in the big table, chapter 3, right? Would- Is that going to be the main stopping point to start with for people to go and look stuff up to see what articles are in or not?
no, so when you get to, this table, this says freestanding signs, and then it says which district you're in, how big it can be, where it can be located. It gives the details for each of the signs, that type of sign. So that page has freestanding, the next page has wall, and then there's small temporary signs are the 3 types of signs that we allow, according to this ordinance, that you'd be allowed to have.
Okay,
But this would be, I'm sorry.
so the small temporary signs would apply to realtor signs as well as political signs. You can't distinguish between
Right.
how you treat either one. They all have to be treated the same.
Right.
Okay.
And it says 8 square feet total. So you could put up 8 1 square foot signs, or you can put up 2 4 square foot signs, or 1 8 foot square foot sign. And it could say, whatever. It could say, I hate my neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's political or freedom of speech. See, signs, right, signs fall into that freedom of speech issue. So it's like this fine line of trying to navigate how you regulate and not regulate them. So it does, with that court case, it does kind of open up. I think it opens up the residential districts to allow for more signage because of how you have to treat every sign the same. Where you can't say you can have a real estate sign, but you can't have how that all works. So, people can put up whatever they want it to say up to 8 square feet. And we probably will not go around and count people's square footage, but if it becomes an issue, we have it here in residential component to say you need to comply.
So your point, Lee, I missed it. They've got the district next to the sizes.
Mm-hmm.
So you know which one's applicable. It's just,
Okay, look on page 21, Lee.
it's just that when
Yeah,
you're
so
at
here.
when you're at the beginning of signs, there's nothing that directs you somewhere quickly so you don't have to read the whole thing. So I don't know, to your point, how do we make this easier to use for people that are going to look at this stuff as they build homes and things?
Do you want me to, I can move those tables up in the article so they happen quicker.
Whatever helps people not have to read the whole thing before they get to an answer.
Yeah. Or at least move non-conforming maybe after non-conforming signs to after the tables, because most people don't deal in non-conforming signs. No, I'll just move those up. I'll move those tables up.
You could put it under, I guess, general requirements. Because then you go into the specific sign measurements, the illumination and all that, but at least then they'd be able to take a look at it. That's
Yeah.
just a gut.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's a good idea.
I have some questions.
Sure.
562A1, are we really saying one per building entrance or
562.
one per driveway?
One.
Maybe? That seems weird to me. So like if I have two entrance doors to my home, I can have two.
I'm sorry, Laura, what section are you in?
562A1 on page 14.
To,
Page 15.
oh, okay, yep.
Yeah, so you would only be able to put one address sign per building entrance. So each of your building entrances could have an address. It's just you can only put your address on a door once. You can't put it on it twice.
Oh, okay.
But if you had
Okay.
3 doors, you could put the address one time on each door.
Okay, I see. Okay. And then I guess I didn't realize as I was looking at this until I got to the temporary signs that oh wait. Okay, this is kind of a separate question. So were the temporary signs, we don't need a permit? We're meaning to say that. Okay.
Right.
So would we or should we add under A somewhere that they're an exception to the permits?
Yeah.
So that would be like 0.4, right?
Yeah. That's a
Question.
good catch.
Question on page 15, 5.6.3, A5. When we say double-sided sign, does that mean that both sides are the same, or is that a way for me to get extra in there by putting one thing on one side and something else on the other?
A double side, let me double check here. It should have a definition.
Oh,
in here.
okay.
Well,
I didn't look. My bad.
it doesn't right here. I'll have to double check. A double-sided sign, usually the definition, if there's not one, we should put one in there. Means it's just back to back. Each side could read something different. but
Okay,
it-
okay.
Yeah.
So I get double,
Well, but it's double-sided, so you can only see it when you go that
right?
way or that way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So
And then I was confused, like, what is a V shape? I was trying to imagine a V shaped sign. Is this like at the top of a pole, something that sits like this and what is a V shaped sign?
Usually it's related to billboards, because billboards a lot of times sit like this so they catch the traffic
Okay.
each way.
Okay.
But sometimes is there somebody that'll put up, a sign somehow to catch the traffic. So this, talks about that the interior angle 90 degrees.
Okay.
When it starts counting as 2 signs or if it's still just 1 sign.
Okay. Thanks.
So this, and in prohibited signs, we have animated signs that are either environmentally activated, mechanically activated, or flashing are all considered animated and are not allowed. I'm guessing that the planning commission will probably talk about electronic changeable copy signs or LED signs. I'm not sure you want to get in the weeds with that one.
I will let them fight that.
Yeah.
I feel like there was, I don't know if I made note of it or not. Does it say, so in all of the charts, it says prohibited everywhere for the illuminated,
Mhm.
but I felt like there was somewhere else that it might have.
Well, are we going to go over those charts and whether they should be, illumination should be allowed, or are we saying
Yeah.
that no illumination on any sign whatsoever? It looks
I
like
think
this
that
is-
was probably a copy and a paste issue, because in the village and the village districts and the commercial districts, I think you would want to allow illuminated signs for your commercial businesses,
Right.
personally.
Well,
But
you kind of have to for restaurants and stuff. If they're open at
Right.
night, how do you find
Right.
them?
yeah, so I think that in that freestanding sign section where it's got the V and it's got C over in limitations, the illumination prohibited should be removed.
Referencing back to the lighting section.
Well, there's a sign lighting section that's in section 5.6.4, which is on page 17 of 68.
Mine's on page 16.
Yeah, I don't know why you have different page numbers.
We're just off by a page.
Just, okay.
So this was a printed out copy that I got from,
Yeah.
from the office.
And it should have been printed from this Word version, so I know. Wow.
Unless you did, that's why, the reason I brought that up was I didn't know if maybe there was another version sent out that
No.
I didn't catch.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Unless maybe when I converted it to a PDF, it moved some stuff. I don't know.
I sent out whatever you sent me.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, I'm not sure. But I've not changed it. It went out one
Okay.
time. So, yeah, that talks about sign illumination there. And I think I was going to say this. I tried to, as far as sign area and height and those items, I tried to reflect what's in the current ordinance to allow that. But the current ordinance, it talks about like a business sign, and then it talks about another type of a sign. So, but it's not clear if they're freestanding or wall or how it works. The moral of the story is the existing ordinance is kind of hard to determine which sign is which and how you can use it. And sometimes I think you can read it like a commercial business can have 3 signs total. This is how I'm reading it in the current ordinance, 3 signs. So you could have 3 freestanding signs or 3 wall signs or some combination, but they're different sizes depending on if it's doing this or doing that. So I tried to distill that down into similar sizes so we don't get a bunch of non-conforming signs or anything like that. So that's where like my sizes came from. But except for in the residential districts, because we either didn't have regulations for them or they were very large. We don't want to have a 50 square foot freestanding sign in our residential district. I don't think. I think we want to allow something a little bit smaller than that, personally.
So when you look at the sign like in Eastport Market, that's what, 20 feet?
Right.
That, you do not want those types of signs
Well,
in the commercial area.
in the commercial area, you can have, yes, you could have that. That freestanding sign you can have. It allows for up to,
It said 8 feet, I think.
does it say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I guess that is a difference because we allow right now up to 20.
20 feet.
Okay. So, yeah, the 8 feet makes people do more kind of like this sign that's in the graphic, kind of more of a monument sign. It's not so tall.
Right. But if you want, like gas stations, they try to, if
Except for
you want
Eastport.
to, huh?
Except for Eastport. There's a
East-
short. The gas-
Eastport, yeah, but
The
they
gas
have
station one.
the
Other
the
one.
grocery sign.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to put in there for commercial, a higher sign?
We could.
Is that a PC question?
No.
Should we give them a suggestion, or what do you think, Laura?
Which,
In the
So-
chart,
oh, you're referring to the chart.
yeah, that
Yeah.
one there. If you
And
look,
Okay, so everything's 8
feet.
foot
Yeah.
and it's freestanding. So, right, the monument. And I guess my question before I can even answer that is the sign on the posts up in the air, is that considered different than a freestanding?
No.
That's
No.
still part of the freestanding.
Yes.
What do you think, Laura? Just let PC figure out if it's 8 feet, or do you want to put a suggestion in there or not?
You could make us do it.
You could make you guys do it? That's fine. We'll
Yeah,
leave it
I
at
don't know.
8.
It's nice to have a suggestion to start from. I'm trying to
What do
think
you
of anything else.
From a
where-
real estate side.
I don't really want to touch the sign.
No?
Yeah.
I feel, why do you have such tall signs? Because you have to see it from far away?
Yeah, it's people to plan, instead of getting on top of it and then put on your brakes because, oh, that's what I want. I mean, you see the Eastport sign from a good, quarter mile, half mile from the location. So you have an idea it's there. We don't have many spots for it, but I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, if we have one, we could conceivably have others.
Yeah.
Do we want to make a provision? 10 to 15 feet,
Yeah, we
and it
can,
would be up to the planning commission based on the business that was going in.
You couldn't really do it that way. You'd have
No.
to treat them all the same. I mean, you could increase it to 15 feet. It's all just whatever look you want to have, essentially. If you want them all to be short, one of the places I think of where they're short is Granville, down by Grand Rapids. There's a mall. It might be the Granville. I can't remember what mall it is, but on that road,
For town crossing.
yep, all of the signs are short there. I mean, and they're set back because it must be a huge road right away because the signs are way off the road. But that must be their standard, is that they can only be 8 or 10 feet. 'cause
Does it
they're
look
all-
weird?
It's true, you can't see them until you're on them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you can see way up ahead what's coming.
Right.
which
So
goes to
what would-
Bob's point.
What we're trying to decide is the maximum height
Yeah.
of a commercial sign.
Yeah. And
There's a
Just the
huge
idea is-
difference between 10 and 15 feet.
yeah, 50%.
Well, yeah, but
Lee,
know?
it's going to be, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I just figured I'd throw some numbers out.
Well,
real quick.
I mean, I could.
I'm
You're,
good
you're
with 20.
absolutely right.
20.
I'm not disputing your claim that there's the difference between 10 and 15 is 5. I agree. But I guess what we have to look at there are no signs taller than 10 feet now, are there?
Eastport's 20.
Oh,
Eastport's the only
okay,
one.
okay.
So what did they have to do?
The current ordinance allows 20.
Oh.
But it
So
also
their sign
has,
is okay, because I thought they had to turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. The LED sign they did they take the top off?
No, the top's still on.
Yeah, because the top's got to come down because it's taller than 20.
but see, that sign is there, so it's not going anywhere. So it's really what we want down the road. And I
Right.
think personally, 10 feet is more than enough.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in the city.
That's,
We're not competing.
guys, that's fine. I was just wondering if, for the commercial, if we wanted a little extra height for it. That's all.
Well, let's do 10. We'll have the planning commission argue about it.
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Um,
I don't think I'll-
I will say, I don't think it's really important, but I noted that 5.6.5L. I thought that was I would remove that.
signs displayed on umbrellas.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
That
So
just
that
seems-
means somebody can't have those signs that say Corona, the.
right. I
Corona
feel like
provides them
you're
with
making
their-
them miss out on
outside
some
people
free
signs.
umbrellas or something.
Yeah, right.
Well, it'd be only if you saw them from the road, but we'll take that out. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Any other sign items? Okay.
So do we need to discuss illumination on any of these individual ones, or are you going to?
I'm going to change illumination in the 2 commercial districts.
Ooh, I did have one last question. So are we saying, like on the small temporary sign definition there, it says on private property. So we're saying we are not allowing temporary signs like on intersections and stuff like that, right? No, it's an open house and I want to put a sign at the end of my road so people know to come this way. Can't do that even if I go and get a permit. No.
Right.
Okay. I don't
Because
like
you
that,
can't,
but
you can't say you can only do it for an open house, you know, or a real estate sign. You'd have to allow Torch Lake Cafe to put one down here
right.
with an
Temporarily.
arrow. Yeah.
And make
with
them get a permit.
right, to say Torch Lake Cafe ahead.
So probably as a resident, I would chance it and put it out by the road and just make sure to take it down.
Right.
And when
It's
we
all an enforcement thing at that point.
Compliance officer will be by.
Yeah.
probably,
We will
I
be-
am marked now. I am on the list.
Follow the arrow
They'll probably
for
pull the
ticketing.
sign and deliver it to you.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, you're saying they're not allowed?
You're not, they
Not.
have to be on private. I mean, you could
Make a
could
deal with
ask Torch
someone.
Lake Cafe if you could put your open house sign on their property outside the
Right.
road right away for your open house, and that would count towards their temporary sign for the day, you know.
Or ask the
but-
airport if I could put
Okay,
it at the
so
end
you're
of
saying,
that road.
like, no political signs would be allowed on the right of way anymore?
Right, they'd have to be on your property.
But I thought Michigan Department of Transportation allowed you within a certain number of feet of the road. Because I had that problem with my campaign signs, actually. And because there was something where you could put it like at the corner of an intersection. But
Yeah, there is something in the current ordinance about putting it on the corner.
yeah.
But it talks about political signs or garage sale signs, but I can't regulate that way.
That's fine.
So then it's either you let everybody have a corner sign for every business or you allow nobody.
I'm fine with that.
So I'm not gonna put your open house sign or your garage sale sign. Unless it's been out there for way too long. 5.7 stormwater management, this basically pretty much defers to the county for stormwater because we don't have a separate stormwater ordinance. And then that's the end of Article 5.
And I would suggest we've put our 2 hours in, that we start with 9
Next time?
at the next meeting.
Okay.
I assume we probably have at least 2, maybe 3 more meetings. We have 9, and we were going to review 3 again with the chart, with all the changes. And then I'm not sure, if you guys want to try to jam through a final copy of this in one night with all the ideas, because Lee and I had a conversation, and it's my view, and he and I agreed that what we want to do is go through and make sure that if there's areas that we're not sure about, that we make sure it's noted, highlighted, so that the planning commission knows they need to spend time on it. And the rest of the stuff is, what we think makes sense, and they can review it. So do you think we need 3 more meetings, 2 more? Or we can start out with 2 and make a third? It's up to you.
Well, definitions are gonna take
I hadn't even thought about that, so that's the next meeting.
Well,
at least one.
Oh,
At
I
so you
least
think
want
we
to
one.
do definitions?
We'll do
then?
definitions with the whole, when we do the whole.
Oh, after we get it all done and then the
Yeah.
definitions will be part of it?
Yeah, when you're reviewing the
That's
whole.
probably a good
document.
idea, because then we could see where the definitions apply without having it all scattered
Yeah.
about.
All right.
So I think, why don't we schedule 2 and maybe we'll have to add on, we're gonna have to have a third to at least review the whole thing, I would.
Well, if we're gonna do the definitions as part of the whole, we better plan on 2 meetings.
For the
For
whole.
that. So we'll have the
For
next
that.
meeting. Yeah. We'll have the next meeting for Article 9 and a review of 3. And then we'll have 2 meetings after that. We'll split the articles. We'll take 1 through 7 and then 8 through 14, or however.
Mhm.
We'll figure that out, but we ought to think about 3 meetings then.
Okay.
We haven't done 4, have we?
No, 4 or 6.
Yeah, I
Right.
got really confused and like what we were gonna cover, I had on my meeting and noted something different than what Bob had. I'm really confused.
Well, that's my fault. I kept screwing it up, so.
Well, I started it though because I said a different, I knew what day I meant, but I put the wrong date, you know.
I will admit, I'm the worst procrastinator, so I do things the last minute, then I'm like, well, I thought I knew what I had to be prepared with, and then I was not paid.
So, next meeting, 4, 6, and 9, can we do 3 of them?
Wait, 4, 6, and 9?
Yeah, because,
Yeah, we have those
We
still
haven't
to
done-
go. 6 is gonna take some time, I think, because Lee had a
6
bunch
is?
of comments in 6.
all right, so next one would be 4 and 9 with an option for 6. That way, if it takes us a couple hours to do 4 and 9, we can slide 6 to the next week.
Okay.
Then that would be 6 and 3. And then you would have 2 meetings to split the final review.
Right.
So we would have 4 more meetings over the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, it's probably gonna take me a month after we get done reviewing 3 to get you a total complete, because that's gonna be formatted and everything so that it can go up to the planning commission. I take it out, it's in a different program than what it's in right now, so that it doesn't look like this. It
It's going to be very
looks
nice.
fancy.
It'll be flash.
Just like those lights at the end of the drive.
All right. So it will probably take me at least a month to get that all done, is my guess. So I don't know if we want to do you want to schedule the 2 and then wait, because that's like
That's fine.
so far out to do
Yeah.
the next part? Okay.
I mean, we figured this was going to take us almost a year. I mean, we didn't have any illusion that it was going to be less than that, so. And then the planning commission will have a document that at least when we turn it over, they'll be able to go through it and see what areas we had concerns with. And then Laura, you'll be able to help them through the easy parts. All right, so I don't have a calendar. What,
Well,
is Thursday nights bad for you?
Thursdays are not great for me.
Okay. So I don't know if you can.
Well, really-
handle
really
this the
depends
day
on
after
Sarah,
the
right?
annual
I mean-
meeting, but I believe it's March 16th. We canceled our meeting, so you should have
Yeah,
that.
I have
date
that open,
available.
yeah.
That's
March
a Wednesday
16th.
night, March
Yeah.
16th.
So
It is it's the day after your board meeting.
I thought there's something else on the 16th.
Usually it's ZBA.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there board of review?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's over, I think that's over in the, I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's one
9 to
9 to 3.
But is that too much to do that board of review for a whole half, that's 6 hours? And then to come to a
That's up
meeting
to
here?
It's only me and Bob.
Yeah,
I
I'm not.
mean, that's a long
Sharon's
day.
going to take the minutes for that.
Oh, so it's only me?
No, you got, there's you.
No, that
and-
has to come here at night.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
it's fine.
You're a lot younger than I am.
March 16th then? Is
March
that
16th, fine.
work?
All right.
That is a Wednesday night.
Yes.
What is it, the 16th?
March 16th, yep. And I can send out a quick email afterwards. We'll do them at 6:15 again still, PM,
Yep.
So we covered 4, 9, and
possibly
Possibly
6.
six.
Yeah.
And I promise I won't send out any reminders.
So Sharon's gonna be at the board review this year instead of you?
Yeah, because Monday, I've got the annual meeting on Tuesday, the budget meeting and a regular board meeting. So I'm gonna, the doctor told me that I'll know either Saturday or Sunday if I'm gonna be worth anything, so. And I'm surgery's on Wednesday, so I'm trying to think what happens for those 4 days that are that bad, but it's not supposed to be fun, so.
Doesn't sound like.
But I would say, I can make the 16th.
Okay. I mean, if,
It's 2 hours. I mean, I just have to keep my leg up, that's all.
well, if it's too bad, we move on to the next time, right?
The worst case is I die and you just keep the meeting going.
Don't
You
say
know?
that.
Harsh.
All right, so then after that, What's good?
How about Monday, April 4th?
Monday, April 4th.
I can do that. I won't be spinning.
I can make that work.
Laura?
I think so. I think I'm okay with that.
It's March 16th.
What are you doing?
And that will be 6 possibly, and then review
3, yeah.
I don't have 6 and 3, do I?
I'll make sure that you get them. I don't remember, did we send them over to you
Well-
after the meeting?
I thought you were going to
I
revise
have to
those
revise
and
3.
then send them out
Yes,
again.
I have to revise
So
them.
we need new, everybody needs.
Yes, you're
Who's
right,
this?
you're right.
But you need 6.
I do.
questions on that folder.
Yeah,
I really-
yeah,
So, because I think in emails there were links to certain ones.
Yeah.
They don't work anymore. Did you have?
it's, the latest one should get you to all of them.
Is that where?
Yeah, yep, yep. So,
So
okay.
there should be something in my email where I can find all of them, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that would have, well, maybe not, because you weren't on the last, I'll email you tomorrow. Let me make a note and I'll email.
Because I don't think I've seen anything from you since the last.
Right, like right after the last one, and I had already sent these out before that, so you probably
Yeah,
did
'cause you
not.
didn't have my email.
Right.
That's right.
So,
Okay. If you don't mind, I appreciate it.
yeah, not a
Thank you.
problem.
All right. We're all set?
So we're doing the 16th and the 4th.
16th and the 4th, right. All right, public comment, there is no public comment. Oh, yes.
Could Sarah review the training time for this weekend?
Oh, sure. I don't know, you guys probably are not coming to it, but are Laura's, are you coming to them? The second one? So, yeah, in the morning, we're doing ZBA training from 9 to 11:30, and then we're doing the afternoon.
1 o'clock.
Well, I mean,
wasn't it?
like, is it 1 or 1:30? Let me look. Let me double check.
You guys
Um,
need to go. You haven't had a case in.
We haven't had a case of, they're all going to pile up in the middle of summer
Yeah.
or something like that, probably.
Are you doing the training?
Becca and Rader's doing it, so my boss
No.
is gonna do one
This
of
is
them, and I'm gonna
beautiful.
do the other one.
Which one are you doing?
The zoning board of appeals training.
Hmm?
The zoning board of appeals training.
Okay, in the morning.
Yeah.
My son-in-law's coming for that.
Okay.
He's on the Petoskey,
Oh,
ZBA.
okay. What's his name?
Just kidding. I'm
Matt
sure there's money somewhere.
McSweeney.
Okay,
He can give him a lot of trouble.
okay, I will. Yeah, the morning ZBA is from 9 to 11:30, and the afternoon, which is the planning commissioner's toolbox, is from 1 to 3:30. Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Then I'll make the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All
I
those
wanted
in,
the second one. Go ahead.
all those in favor say, well,
You gotta be
Lee
quick to
couldn't
beat
say
Lee.
because he had the bottle of Coke up to his mouth.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Nathan, thank you, sir.